So let me say a little bit about this interdisciplinary research group that has to do with photovoltaics. We all know that electric power today is cheap enough that photovoltaics really can't compete with the coal-fired power plant for sure. We also know that solar cells have been manufactured for over 50 years. And we know the trends. We know that over a decade the price will go down by a certain amount. And over a decade the production will go up by a certain amount. These are power laws that are empirical. And how many of you actually have heard of Moore's Law? That is to do with the semiconductor industry and the price of computer chips and the storage capacity on computer chips and so on. And that scales with time. Well, the same thing is true in photovoltaics. And so we know if we continue business as usual where we're going to be in 30 years with pretty good assurance. Unless we do something that's really game-changing. And so that's why we're in the business of looking at materials for photovoltaic applications, hoping to make a really substantive change that'll get us off the learning curve that we've been on for the last 50 years. I want to say a little bit about membranes. Membranes, as I mentioned before, are the weak link in a lot of applications. Batteries, fuel cells, electrolyzers, things like that. Membranes come in two different forms, actually, and we're hoping to actually build membranes different from those two forms. They're the proton exchange membranes, which are mostly organic materials. They involve water, and so it's pretty hard to operate these materials above 100 degrees C. Then there's another class of membrane. It's called the solid oxide membrane. So this is a solid electrolyte. And there, the movement of the ions is so slow at low temperatures that you have to operate them at very elevated temperatures, let's say 500 or 600 C. So this group is very interested in kind of combining those two and making really different kinds of membranes that can operate between those two temperatures. And again, they're interested in fundamental understanding. In this case, it's ionic transport. In the case of the solar cells, it's electronic transport, of course. So we had a seed project when we started out the program. This is now completed, and we're starting a couple of other successful, hopefully successful seed projects. In fact, we're in the process of looking at proposals in the next month or so for the next year of funding our seed projects. Well, this one had to do with storage of hydrogen, or perhaps methane, fuels other than gasoline. And we started off with this seed project because we have a lot of expertise here. In fact, you've probably been reading about it in the newspapers a lot recently. We have a lot of expertise in these materials called clathrate hydrates. They're a special form of ice that forms under low temperature and high pressure. And you can see there, it clogs up oil pipelines. It also clogs up the cap you try to put on the well in the Gulf. So we know a lot about them, and they're a nuisance. On the other hand, they store a lot of methane. And in fact, I don't have a picture of it here, but you can light a match to it, and this ice cube actually burns. And of course, the only residue is water, so that's sort of interesting. And so we decided we'd try to store hydrogen in these materials. And probably you won't use ice as your gas tank in the fuel cell car, but there are other materials that form with the same structure, and one of them is the semiconductor silicon. So we're also interested in seeing if we can store hydrogen in something like silicon.